Welcome to my video. In this video, we will improve our English listening skills and our ability to understand words with the listening piece. Just like babies' natural language learning. In the explanation section of the video, there are English, German, Russian, Arabic, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Turkish translations. You can learn better by using these translations. Your comments are very important to us. Please write us a comment. I wish you a good listening.
She was walking lazily, for the fierce April sun was directly overhead. Her umbrella blocked its rays, but nothing blocked the heat, the sort of raw, wild heat that crushes you with its energy. A few buffalo were tethered under coconuts, browsing the parched verges. Occasionally a car went past, leaving its treads in the melting pitch, like the wake of a ship at sea. Otherwise it was quiet, and she saw no one. In her long white Sunday dress you might have taken Ginny Narine for 14 or 15. In fact she was 12, a happy, uncomplicated child with a nature as open as the red hibiscus that decorated her black, waist-length hair. Generations earlier her family had come to Trinidad from India as overseers on the sugar plantations. Her father had had some success through buying and clearing land around Rio Cristalino and planting it with coffee. On the dusty verge, 20 yards ahead of Ginny a car pulled up. She had noticed it cruise by once before, but she did not recognize it and could not make out the driver through its dark windows, themselves as black as its gleaming paintwork. As she walked past it, the driver's glass started to open. "Hello, Ginny," she heard behind her. She paused and turned. A slight color rose beneath her dusky skin. Ravi Kirjani was tall and lean, and always well-dressed. His black eyes and large white teeth flashed in the sunlight as he spoke. Everyone in Rio Cristalino knew Ravi. Ginny often heard her unmarried sisters talk ruefully of him, of how, if only their father were alive and they still had land, one of them might marry him. And then they would squabble over who it might be and laugh at Ginny because she was too simple for any man to want. "How do you know my name, Ravi?" she asked with a thrill. "How do you know mine?" "Everyone knows your name. You're Mr. Kirjani's son." "Right. And where are you going, Ginny?" She hesitated and looked down at the ground again. "To chapel," she said with a faint smile. "But Ginny, good Hindus go to the temple." His rich, cultured voice was gently mocking as he added with a laugh, "Or maybe the temple pundits aren't your taste in color." She blushed more deeply at the reference to Father Olivier. She did not know how to reply. It was true that she liked the young French priest, with his funny accent and blue eyes, but she had been going to the Catholic chapel for months before he arrived. She loved its cheerful hymns, and its simple creed of one God, so different from those miserable Hindu gods who squabbled with each other like her sisters at home. But, added to that, the vulgarity of Ravi's remark bewildered her because his family were known for their breeding. People always said that Ravi would be a man of honor, like his father. Ravi looked suddenly grave. His dark skin seemed even darker. It may be that he regretted his words. Possibly he saw the confusion in Ginny's wide brown eyes. In any case, he did not wait for an answer. "Can I offer you a lift to chapel in my 21st birthday present?" he asked, putting his sunglasses back on. She noticed how thick their frames were. Real gold, she thought, like the big, fat watch on his wrist. "It's a Mercedes, from Papa." "Do you like it?" he added nonchalantly. From the shade of her umbrella, Ginny peered up at a small lone cloud that hung motionless above them. The sun was beating down mercilessly, and there was an urge in the air and an overpowering sense of growth. With a handkerchief she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Ravi gave a tug at his collar. "It's air-conditioned, Ginny. And you won't be late for chapel," he continued, reading her mind. But chapel must have been the last thing on Ravi's mind when Ginny, after a moment's hesitation, accepted his offer. For he drove her instead to a quiet sugar field outside town, and there, with the Mercedes concealed among the sugar canes, he introduced himself into her. Ginny was in a daze. Young as she was, she barely understood what was happening to her. The beat of calypso filled her ears, and the sugar canes towered over her as the cold draft from the air conditioner played against her knees. Afterwards, clutching the ragged flower that had been torn from her hair, she lay among the tall, sweet-smelling canes and sobbed until the brief tropical twilight turned to starry night. But she told no one, not even Father Olivier. 2 weeks later, the little market town of Rio Cristalino was alive with gossip. Ravi Kirjani had been promised the hand of Sunita Morpalani. Like the Kirjanis, the Morpalanis were an established Indian family, one of the wealthiest in the Caribbean. But while the Kirjanis were diplomats, the Morpalanis were a commercial family. They had made their fortune in retailing long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customers' pockets, and now Morpalani stores were scattered throughout Trinidad and some of the other islands. Prudently, they had diversified into banking and insurance, and as a result their influence was felt at the highest level. It was a benevolent influence, of course, never abused, for people always said the Morpalanis were a respectable family, and well above reproach. They had houses in Port of Spain, Tobago, and Barbados, as well as in England and India. But their main residence was a magnificent, sprawling, colonial-style mansion just When Ginny heard of Ravi's engagement, the loathing she had conceived for him grew into a sort of numb hatred. She was soon haunted by a longing to repay that heartless, arrogant brute. She would give anything to humiliate him, to see that leering, conceited grin wiped from his face. But outwardly she was unmoved. On weekdays she went to school, and on Sundays she went still to Father Olivier's afternoon service. "Girl, you sure does have a lot to confess to that Whitey," her mother would say to her each time she came home late from chapel. "He's not a Whitey, he's a man of God." "That's as may be, child, but don't forget he does be a man first." The months passed and she did not see Ravi again. And then it rained. All through August the rain hardly stopped. It rattled persistently on the galvanized roofs until you thought you would go mad with the noise. And if it stopped, the air was as sticky as treacle, and you prayed for it to rain again. Then one day in October, towards the end of the wet season, when Ginny's family were celebrating her only brother's 18th birthday, something happened that she had been dreading for weeks. She was lying in the hammock on the balcony, playing with her 6-year-old nephew Penny. Suddenly, Penny cried out, "Ginny, why are you so fat?" Throughout the little frame house, all celebration stopped. On the balcony, curious eyes were turned upon Ginny. And you could see what the boy meant. "Gods have mercy on you, Virginia." "Watch the shape of your belly," cried Mrs. Marine, exploding with indignation and pulling her daughter indoors, away from the prying neighbors' ears. Her voice was loud and hard, and there was a blackness in her eyes like the blackness of the skies before thunder. How could she have been so blind? She cursed herself for it, and harsh questions burst from her lips. "How did you bring such shame upon us, girl? What worthless layabouts does you throw yourself upon? What male have you now? No decent man, that does be sure. And why did you blacken your father's name like this, at your age? The man as didn't even live to see you born. Thank the gods he didn't have to know of this. You sure got some explaining to your precious man of God, child." At last her words were exhausted, and she sat down heavily, her weak heart pounding dangerously and her chest heaving from the exertion of her outburst. Then Ginny told her mother of the afternoon that Ravi Kirjani had raped her. There was a long silence after that, and all you could hear was Mrs. Marine wheezing. When at last she spoke, her words were heavy and disjointed. "If anybody have to get damnation, that Kirjani boy'll get it," she said. Ginny's sisters were awestruck. "Shall we take her over to the health center, Ma?" asked Indra. "The midwife comes today." "Is you crazy, girl? You all does know how that woman does run she mouth like a duck's bottom. You all leave this to me." That night, Mrs. Marine took her young daughter to see Dr. Khan, an old friend of her husband whose discretion she could count on. There was no doubt about it. The child was pregnant. "And what can us do, Dr. Khan?" asked Mrs. Marine. "Marry her off, quick as you can," the lean old doctor replied bluntly. Mrs. Marine scoffed. "Who would take her now, doctor? I does beg you. There's nothing? Nothing you can do for us?" A welcome breeze came through the slats of the surgery windows. Outside you could hear the shrill, persistent sound of cicadas, while mosquitoes crowded at the screens, attracted by the bare bulb over the simple desk. Dr. Khan sighed and peered over the frames of his glasses. Then he lowered his voice and spoke wearily, like a man who has said the same thing many times. "I might arrange something for the baby once it's born. But it must be born, my dear. Your daughter is slimly built. She's young, a child herself. To you, she looks barely 3 months pregnant. Don't fool yourself, if the dates she's given us are correct, in 3 months she'll be full term. Anything now would be too messy." "And if it's born," asked Mrs. Marine falteringly, "if it's born, what does happen then?" "No, Ma, I want it anyway, I want to keep it," said Ginny quietly. Don't be a fool, child. It's my baby. Ma. I want to have it. I want to keep it. And who's to look after you, and pay for the baby? Even if that Kirjani does agrees to pay, who does you hope to marry? I'll marry, don't worry. You'll marry. You does be a fool. Who will you marry? Kirjani, ma. I's going to marry Ravi Kirjani. Dr. Khan gave a chuckle. So, your daughter is not such a fool as you think, he said. I told you to marry her off. And the Kirjani boy's worth a try. What does she have to lose? She's too clever.
Thank you for listening. Your comments are very important to us. We read them one by one. Do not forget to write us a comment. We thank you.